just terrible government overreach. You're seeing it now in England where people are getting arrested for tweets.
FBI, open up!
So I'm actually being arrested.
You're going to be arrested, okay?
Right.
I'm take you up to the police station.
Right.
Ask you, okay, this is in relation to some comments that you've made on a Facebook page. Okay?
Oh, really? Oh, it's a Facebook crime, is it?
Okay.
Anyone who's been arrested, we can search them under Section 32 of the Police and Evidence Act.
Right.
And that's for dangerous items.
But I'm going to be
we've had
arrested for
reports that
posting on
you've made
Facebook.
some comments that are offensive, obscene, and people have made a complaint about that, and it's transferred. They've
Can
come
you-
from
can you tell
a
me what
Facebook
this
account
comment
in your
was?
name.
We'll do
Okay,
that
well,
in
we'll
an
do that when
interview.
we interview you.
All right. And so,
Okay.
what am I going to be locked up for the night, or?
Hopefully
Well,
not.
hopefully not.
Gentlemen, this is Democracy Manifest. Get your hand off my penis! Ta-ta and farewell.
Yeah. Well,
England, people talk about Soviet Russia, like how bad Russia is in terms of cracking down on thought police and cracking down on bad tweets and things like that. I think the statistics are, I think England I think there's something like 4,000 people have been arrested in England for thought crimes where they've said things online that people find to be a hateful thing or a problematic thing. And I think it's only 200 in Russia.
oh, wow.
Yeah.
That says a lot.
Yeah.
Maybe in Russia they're too scared to do it at all.
Could be. Yeah. But the fact that they're comfortable with finding people who've said something that they disagree with and putting them in a fucking cage in England in 2024 is really wild.
Yeah.
Especially they're saying you can get arrested just for retweeting something.
The offence of incitement to racial hatred involves publishing or distributing material which is insulting or abusive, which is intended to or likely to start racial hatred. So if you retweet that, then you're republishing that, and then potentially you're committing that offence.
You what?
And we do have dedicated police officers who are scouring social media. Their job is to look for this material and then follow up with identification arrests and so forth. So it's a really, really serious. People might
It's the biggest piece of dog shit that I have ever heard.
think they're not doing anything harmful. They are, and the consequences will be visited upon them.
And here's the problem with that. Even if you say, yeah, well, people shouldn't tweet hateful things. I agree. They shouldn't. But who's to decide what is a hateful thing?
That's the problem. It's
That's
subjective.
the problem. It's very subjective.
And it still shouldn't be a crime.
And in our lifetime, we've seen that get moved, right? So it used to be if a guy thought he was a woman and his name was Doug, and you grew up with Doug, and all of a sudden Doug wants to be called Debbie, if you call him Doug, it's no big deal. Like, yeah, maybe you're being rude to call him Doug, but it's not a hate crime,
Right.
okay? Well, now a lot of people think it's a hate crime, and that got you banned from Twitter for life. So if you dead named someone on the old Twitter, you are banned for life. Dead name, not even making up a name. You can call them an idiot. You can call someone an idiot. Okay, forget about a man and address. Maybe that's a problem. But if you call like a regular guy an idiot, you stupid fuck, fine, no problem. But if you call Doug, you will get banned for life. Okay, that's the new hate speech. That's crazy. Now, if that keeps going, that didn't exist before. If that keeps going, maybe you can go to jail for calling him Doug. Maybe they think it's okay to put you in jail because you violated their hate speech laws.
The UK is becoming a scary place. What's more frightening to me is the lack of pushback to these dystopian policies. For next, let's hear Mr. Bean standing up against the tyranny of government.
My starting point when it comes to the consideration of any issue relating to free speech is my passionate belief that the second most precious thing in life is the right to express yourself freely. The most precious thing in life, I think, is food in your mouth. And the third most precious is a roof over your head. But a fixture for me in the number 2 slot is free expression, just below the need to sustain life itself. That is because I have enjoyed free expression in this country all my professional life and fully expect to continue to do so. Personally, I suspect highly unlikely to be arrested for whatever laws exist to contain free expression because of the undoubtedly privileged position that is afforded to those of a high public profile. So my concerns are less for myself and more for those more vulnerable because of their lower profile. Like the man arrested in Oxford for calling a police horse gay, or the teenager arrested for calling the Church of Scientology a cult, or the cafe owner arrested for displaying passages from the Bible on a TV screen. I read somewhere a defender of the status quo claiming that the fact that the gay horse case was dropped after the arrested man refused to pay the fine, and that the Scientology case was also dropped at some point during the court process, was proof that the law was working well, ignoring the fact that the only reason these cases were dropped was because of the publicity that they had attracted. The police sensed that ridicule was just around the corner and withdrew their actions. But what about the thousands of other cases that did not enjoy the oxygen of publicity, that weren't quite ludicrous enough to attract media attention? Even for those actions that were withdrawn, people were arrested, questioned, taken to court, and then released. That isn't a law working properly. That is censoriousness of the most intimidating kind, guaranteed to have, as Lord Dear says, a chilling effect on free expression and free protest. Parliament's Joint Committee on Human Rights summarised, as you may know, this whole issue very well by saying, while arresting a protester for using threatening or abusive speech may, depending on the circumstances, be a proportionate response, we do not think that language or behaviour that is merely insulting should ever be criminalised in this way. The clear problem with the outlawing of insult is that too many things can be interpreted as such. Criticism is easily construed as insult by certain parties. Ridicule easily construed as insult. Sarcasm, unfavourable comparison, merely stating an alternative point of view to the orthodoxy can be interpreted as insult. And because so many things can be interpreted as insult, it is hardly surprising that so many things have been, as the examples I talked about earlier, people. I'm only intolerant of intolerance. And people tend to nod sagely and say, oh yes, wise words, wise words. And yet if you think about this supposedly inarguable statement for longer than 5 seconds, you realise that all it is advocating is the replacement of one kind of intolerance with another, which to me doesn't represent any kind of progress at all. Underlying prejudices, injustices, or resentments are not addressed by arresting people. They are addressed by the issues being aired, argued, and dealt with, preferably outside the legal process. For me, the best way to increase society's resistance to insulting or offensive speech is to allow a lot more of it. As with childhood diseases, you can better resist those germs to which you have been exposed. We need to build our immunity to taking offence so that we can deal with the issues that perfectly justified criticism can raise. Our priority should be to deal with the message, not the messenger. As President Obama said in an address to the United Nations only a month or so ago, laudable efforts to restrict speech can become a tool to silence critics or oppress minorities. The strongest weapon against hateful speech is not repression, it is more speech. And that's the essence of my thesis, more speech. If we want a robust society, we need more robust dialogue, and that must include the right to insult or to offend. And even if, as Lord Dear says, the freedom to be inoffensive is no freedom at all. The repeal of this word in this clause will be only a small step, but it will, I hope, be a critical one in what should be a longer-term project to pause and slowly rewind a creeping culture of censoriousness. It is a small skirmish in the battle, in my opinion, to deal with what Sir Salman Rushdie refers to as the outrage industry. Self-appointed arbiters of the public good, encouraging media-stoked outrage to which the police feel under terrible pressure to react. A newspaper rings up Scotland Yard. Someone has said something slightly insulting on Twitter about someone who we think a national treasure. What are you going to do about it? And the police panic and they scrabble around and then grasp the most inappropriate lifeline of all, Section 5 of the Public Order Act, that thing where you can arrest anybody for saying anything that might be construed by anyone else as insulting. You know, they don't seem to need a real victim. They need only to make the judgment that somebody could have been offended if they had heard or read what has been said. The most ludicrous degree of latitude. The storms that surround Twitter and Facebook comment have raised some fascinating issues about free speech, which we haven't really yet come to terms with. Firstly, that we all have to take responsibility for what we say, which is quite a good lesson to learn. But secondly, we've learned how appallingly prickly and intolerant society has become of even the mildest adverse comment. The law should not be aiding and abetting this new intolerance. Free speech can only suffer if the law prevents us from dealing with its consequences. I offer my wholehearted support to the Reform Section 5 campaign. Thank you very much.
Excellently said. Rowan Atkinson nailed it. He aimed right at the heart and mind of the weak and the desperate one. That's all for today, my friends. See you in the next one.